Demon Slayer's popularity has brought us a new arena fighter from the acclaimed developer CyberConnect 2. Published by Aniplex and SEGA, this game offers you a new take on the arena combat system, complete with online and a fully fleshed out story mode that covers the entirety of Season 1 and the Mugen Train arc. In this video, we're gonna break it all down, from story mode to the combat system and online features. My name's Globku, and this is my review of Demon Slayer Hinokami Chronicles. Like most arena fighters, this game is very easy to pick up and play. The attack button gives you an auto combo that can be changed into a launcher or knockdown by simply tilting the left thumbstick. Every character also has 3 special moves, all with different properties and a devastating ultimate attack. This arena fighter is a 2v2 game, meaning you can take 2 characters into battle, and even though they share the same health bar and meter, you can swap between these characters or call them for assists. With your assist gauge full, you can also be saved from a devastating combo by using the escape. For movement, you can dash, air dash, jump around, and move freely, allowing you to be very creative in how you approach your opponent. And defensively, this game has a lot of options too. You can block as usual, but you can also push your opponent while blocking. And you have a timed parry that can lead to some very big damage. This combat system is fantastic because it's able to be both beginner friendly and have enough depth for you to explore at a more competitive level. To every attacking option in this game, there's usually a defensive response, making this probably the most competitive arena fighter ever developed by CyberConnect 2. Characters are also a lot more unique than you would expect. Even though the roster consists of only 12 characters plus 6 alternate skins with their own ultimate, these characters have their own strengths, weaknesses, and while it's easy to pick any of them up because mashing the attack button always gives you a combo, mastering a character is another thing entirely. Their special attacks all have different properties. Even if they look similar, they usually have something unique about them that affects combo routes, block strings, and makes characters play very differently. Their strong attacks are all distinct, their grab animations all travel different amounts, their assists serve completely different purposes, and they all have an invisible defense stat that makes characters take more or less damage from combos. So even if a character is strong, it's possible that the trade-off is that they die extremely fast. The combo system is also really fun. There are several ways to extend combos with special moves, dash cancels, assists, and depending on how your combo started, you'll see one of 3 timers next to your combo counter. Armored moves usually start a red combo, which is the shortest of them all. Regular attacks usually start a yellow combo, which is in the middle, and if you execute a perfect parry, then you can start a blue combo, which lasts the longest, giving you the best possible punish. Everyone feels powerful in their own way, and that's especially the case when characters enter boost mode. For a limited time, they are faster and deal increased damage, and then if they enter surge mode, which works almost like a true awakening, they can launch whatever specials they want for free, and all of their attacks have armor, so you can be incredibly aggressive. Even this almighty mode has its counters if it's being used recklessly. Given how unique these characters are, a 12-character roster doesn't bother me as much as it would in a Storm game, for instance, where the difference between characters isn't as relevant. It's still a small roster for sure, but with 6 free characters coming out in future updates, I definitely feel better about this roster size. That said, every combat system isn't complete without its fair share of issues, so let's talk about what could be improved. First, the camera. I love the cinematic look, and usually the camera behaves correctly, shifting from an over-the-shoulder perspective into a side view whenever you start a combo. However, there are times where this just doesn't work properly, and players can definitely take advantage of the huge particle effects on screen to hide a grab or a charged strong attack, with the opponent having to guess what's about to hit them. I also wish assists were a bit more consistent when you summon them. It's possible to summon assists in the smallest gaps in block strings, and sometimes you can hit them as you are pressuring your opponent. But other times, while your opponent is blocking, you will move far enough away to where the assist comes in from behind you and you're the one getting hit. It feels like the position where assists are summoned is inconsistent and can lead to some random results. Finally, a note for PlayStation 4 users, the whole game has a huge input delay, no matter the game mode. It makes the whole game feel a lot more sluggish, a lot heavier than it should, and it makes it harder to react with things like the time parry. This delay will stack up with the online delay, making the experience pretty terrible. But even some story moments weren't as enjoyable thanks to this. It's a huge problem with the PlayStation 4 version, and we don't know if it will ever get fixed, which makes it really hard to recommend the PS4 version of this game. We only got codes for PS4 and PS5, so we can't really speak to the Xbox One and Xbox Series versions, or even PC. I highly recommend you look up an in-depth review on those if you are planning on buying on those platforms. With that said, let's move on to story mode. This is probably the first thing you'll do when you boot up the game, as everything, and I mean everything, is locked when you first launch it. Every character, stage, skin can be unlocked by playing story mode, or purchased in the reward screen using Kimetsu points. The game's reward screen is very good at telling you what needs to be done in story mode to unlock each individual reward, but you can also skip those conditions and just buy them with in-game currency that you accumulate by playing versus matches or online. But it's far more efficient to unlock them via story mode, which covers the entirety of Season 1 plus the Mugen Train arc. Story mode consists of free roaming, combat, quick time events, cutscenes, anime screen slideshows, and some optional challenges. The free roaming in Demon Slayer is very straightforward. You're dropped into an area and you can run around at a set speed determined by the game. I really enjoyed seeing a lot of these spaces fully realized. The final exam forest, Asakusa City, they explore these spaces in a way that the anime never could. And they actually had a lot more environments than I was first expecting. That said, exploring them isn't always fun. There are side paths with collectibles to find, but everything is marked on the map, so it's not exploration exactly. More like you decide whether you want to collect everything or not, and just follow those icons on the map. And after you follow one of those side paths, usually you have to return to the main path. And it just feels like this character needs a sprint button or something. There are also certain platforms that can be jumped or climbed by running into this shiny line, which once again makes it feel less like you're exploring the place and more like you're just going through the motions. Sometimes instead of collectibles, you'll see these blue exclamation marks that look like side quests. However, all side quests in this game consist of simply interacting with a number of objects, so calling them side quests may be a bit of a stretch, since they feel more like collectibles too. Although sometimes they do include some voice dialogue or written text, and I really like it how natural these are sometimes. For instance, Tanjiro spent 7 days on the final exam forest. It's natural that he would run into Zenitsu or Inosuke and the other survivors at some point. So getting a glimpse of what they were up to ends up feeling like it's completing the experience rather than adding filler. To break the monotony of exploring, however, sometimes you can get attacked by a demon. And these demons, while weak, usually have very unique movesets. And they designed a bunch of unique demons. You don't really see duplicate designs at all, I believe. If you're able to parry the demon's attacks, you can finish the fight before fully depleting their health. So if you're good, you can power through these fights no problem. Unless you're on PS4, in which case, with that delay, I really don't blame you if you can't do it. But you don't just fight minor demons, there are also some great boss fights. Every boss fight is unique in its own way, with a lot of moves to look out for and dodge, and then find your window to punish. Some even have quick time events embedded into their mechanics, which leaves you without knowing what to expect from the next encounter. And if you do manage to defeat them, usually a quick time event will trigger. This is where you have to press the correct button as fast as possible, but there are no failed quick time event scenes. In fact, you can press whatever button you want during the quick time event, because the game will only react to the correct button, so feel free to mash everything when you see a quick time event popping up. But these cutscenes with quick time events are just amazing. CyberConnect 2 does not miss when it comes to this type of action anime cutscene. That said, some cutscenes used to tell the story outside of quick time events feel somewhat unfinished in the sound department. They do dramatic scenes very well, the voice acting is top notch, their facial expressions have come a long way, but there's just something about some of these action scenes that feels like it could have used a little bit of extra polish. The whole story is told in an abridged way, definitely takes into account that most players who will buy this game have already watched the show, which I definitely appreciated. But for those players who haven't and will learn the story through the game for the first time, they complete the story with memory fragments. You collect these while free roaming, unlocking voice-acted scenes using anime screenshots. And they are completely optional, so they won't show up during your main story playthrough, but you can access them in the story menu, and if you haven't watched the show yet, they will fill in the blanks and complete the story for you. This entire story mode does have a big problem though, and it's something this developer is guilty of doing in the past. The whole thing is way too easy and there are no difficulty options, which to me takes away from how cool some of these boss fights are, since you don't really have to learn them in order to clear them. And that's the case even if you're going for S ranks. Sometimes I would lose half my health and the game would still give me an S rank. There are only two exceptions to this. One, the Mugen Train arc. They went all out on the Mugen Train. The whole story, cutscene quality, polish, and difficulty simply goes up in this arc, making me wish the whole story mode had this level of quality. The rest is good too. Mugen Train is just a step above everything else, especially with how they use the official soundtrack to highlight some key moments. This was my third time experiencing the Mugen Train arc in animated form, and it still hit me in the same way as the movie did. It's extremely well done. There are also special missions that pop up after you beat a chapter, and this is where the developers had some fun creating some more challenging movesets for demons. For instance, they looked at the tongue demon that Zenitsu defeats during the drum house arc and said, what if that guy also had a poison attack? The difficulty in these missions is also a lot more challenging, which once again makes me wish that there was a way to select a harder difficulty for the entirety of story mode. Also, all of these special missions take place in unique stages that are not selectable in versus mode. mode. No idea why. They are the perfect size, they are visually distinct, but this is the only place where they are available. They could easily extend their number of stages by just adding these, but for some reason, you can't do it. Finally, story mode is a bit on the short side. My first completionist run, that is getting all collectibles, all side missions, and S rank on every single chapter, took me around 10 hours. And after those 10 hours, there's very little replay value in story mode. So for as amazing as it was, on its own, I find it hard to justify this game's full price with story mode alone. Everything else needs to work for this to be a worthy package. So let's look at some other game modes. Training is the only other form of offline content you can experience, and this one is really bad. First, you will select a character, and then you will fight that one character 10 times in a row, with some optional conditions like landing a 10-hit combo or finishing the fight with an ultimate art. It's like an inverted arcade mode, where instead of fighting different characters, you always fight the same, but you can swap characters instead. These missions are always the same no matter the character you're fighting against, and the challenges aren't anything special. Difficulty is once again way too easy, which makes this game mode a grind. Fortunately, there are no unlockables tied to this game mode, so you can be safely ignored. Unless you want to get all the achievements or trophies, in which case you gotta beat 100 challenges in total. That is about 3 hours of playing a brain-dead game mode. To me, this training mode really adds no value to the overall package. Crafted challenges with this fighting system would be a great addition to the game, but this isn't crafted. This is copy-paste, and you're just fighting against the CPU, so it's really not that fun. But speaking of fighting against the CPU, let's jump into versus. Versus mode is where you can play against a friend locally or against the CPU. There are a few match settings, but very limited. You can change the timer, the number of rounds, and the player's handicap. But that's it. No 1v1 battles, no crazy wacky rules if you want to have a different experience, which is odd because the game is definitely capable of 1v1 battles. We have a few of those in story mode, and in training, the battles are always 2v1. There's a mission in story mode where you actually have infinite boost mode, and that could be fun to try out against a friend too. The CPU has 5 difficulty options, but even the hardest one is barely a challenge once you've played enough of this game. So there's a lot they could have done to make CPU battles more exciting, but it is rather straightforward. It's also here in Versus that you can find practice if you just want to go into training against the dummy and optimize your combos. They've included a damage display so you can definitely optimize your routes. But this game, given how good I think the combat is, should definitely have more options in practice. Your training dummy almost has no options. You can make them block or not. You can also set them to block after you drop a combo, but other than that, all you can do is set them to auto recover when your combo is finished. That's it. You cannot force the dummy to attack you, which means you can't practice blue combos after a parry, and you can't practice any specific situation because there's no recording function. All you can do is make the training dummy become the CPU or have a second player take control of them. I think in a game like this, it's important to be able to practice specific situations. For instance, I want to know what I can do when Rengoku starts unleashing all of his specials on me. I know there are gaps, so I want to practice the situation so I can punish it better whenever I run into it online. But unfortunately, your options in practice are very limited. And speaking of limited options, let's jump into the online. In the online menu, you will find 2 options, ranked and casual matches. You can also edit your Slayer ID with a picture and quote that you've unlocked in story mode, customizing how the opponent will see you when you first head into battle. Ranked matches will find you a random opponent, and you can rematch with them up to 3 times. But it is not a best of 3 set. If you're winning 2-0, the opponent can choose to rematch and end the set at 2-1, which is a weird choice, the same one that Guilty Gear made earlier this year. If you win, you get some points. If you lose some points. So it's a true ranking system. No infinite rematches means you can't really grind your rank. This is how it should be. It is a good ranking system. On casual matches though, I feel like the options are very limited. First of all, to customize the match, you can only adjust the timer, but you don't have the infinite timer option, and you can't even customize the number of rounds. If you set your match to private, it'll open a lobby and you can invite a friend to join you. Only one friend, meaning that there's no endless mode, no tournament mode, and absolutely no way to spectate matches, which is going to be very harmful to this game's competitive scene. Also, after you join the lobby, you can no longer switch characters or battleground. You have to do that before you join the lobby, which is a little bit ridiculous. Fortunately, after a match is done, you have the options to just retry as many times as you want, or go back to the character select screen and switch characters in stage. Netcode wise, from the tests that I've made, this game has a delay-based netcode, which means your inputs will be delayed a certain amount of frames, depending on how far the opponent is from you. Matches against players using Wi-Fi will often stutter, which can be infuriating, but this will also occasionally happen against opponents from different regions, even if they have a wired connection. But against players players who are within the same region as you and have a wired connection, matches are solid. The delay is relatively stable, but it also feels like it's bigger than it should. Even if you're playing against a friend of yours who just lives down the street, the game will add around 5 to 7 frames of delay. That's the minimum amount of delay that you can play with, even in the best of conditions. While not ideal, it is playable, and I do appreciate the stability, but making a stable netcode while adding a ton of delay isn't a good netcode in my opinion. The challenge is to make the delay unnoticeable while keeping it stable. And in a game where timed parries and reactions are so necessary, you can definitely feel that delay and it will affect your matches. Keep in mind that when queuing for ranked, the only thing that you see is your connection quality to your opponent, so you have no idea if they are wired or on Wi-Fi, so you can't really control the quality of your matches that way either. Also, this online delay will stack up with the PlayStation 4's offline delay, making every match an absolute nightmare, where your inputs are delayed for more than 20 frames, even with the most ideal conditions. I really did not enjoy a single online match with the PS4 version of this game. Something as simple as blocking an incoming dash becomes extremely hard, let alone time parries or sidestepping and punishing. Also, because PS4 and PS5 can play against each other online, this means that PS5 users have an advantage from the get-go. This is a huge problem for the PS4 version, and hopefully they're able to fix it in the future, but given CyberConnect 2's track record with patching issues out of games, I wouldn't hold my breath. Let's wrap this up with some final notes on presentation. The graphics are just fantastic. Better on PS5 than PS4 as expected, but the PS4 version still looks great. Cutscenes in story mode sometimes have some pacing issues, and it seems like some sounds are missing from certain parts, as I mentioned. It feels like it could use an extra run-through for polish. But for the most part, this game looks and sounds great, especially in gameplay. The sound design while playing the game is fantastic. There are distinct audio cues for everything, and parrying an attack feels very satisfying in great part due to the audio design. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this game's amazing soundtrack. It uses licensed official tracks from the anime and movie to highlight some of the biggest moments in story mode. But CyberConnect 2 has also created 85 original tracks that have that very distinct CC2 vibe, but are also heavily influenced by the sounds and themes of the official music. It's perfect. Currently, the game runs at 30 FPS, but there is a promised 60 FPS patch that will come to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC, which is another reason why the PS4 version will be at a disadvantage when playing online, because they got half the frames and an incredibly high delay. That said, 60 FPS will reportedly only apply to gameplay scenes, so a lot of the cutscenes in story mode will not be affected. The options menu has some very good options, but it's also missing some elementary things. You can fully customize the controls to your liking, you can select Japanese or English voices, you've got all the audio sliders you usually get, but there are zero accessibility options like colorblind modes, and no brightness setting. Personally, I had no issue with the brightness of this game, but different people use different setups with different monitors or TVs, and my editor did run into a situation where he just couldn't see anything. With all that said, it's time to score this game. If you're new here, we use letters for our review scores from F all the way up to A. And this is my score for Demon Slayer Hinokami Chronicles. Please keep in mind that this is my score for the PlayStation 5 version. The PS4 version is significantly worse, that I would actually score it a C. To me, the online doesn't even exist on PS4 because it's such a bad experience. As for the PS5 version, the netcode and lack of spectator is gonna push this game's score down, along with some minor issues in combat, like the camera, and the story mode difficulty being just way too easy. Those are my main issues with the game, but I still love it. Combat is way better than I expected, characters are unique and gives you a reason to try them out and practice them, and I can't wait to see what they'll do with future updates, be it balance patches, fixes, or the new playable demons that they're releasing for free. And that's Demon Slayer Hinokami Chronicles. If you've played the game, go ahead and let me know your opinion in the comments down below. That way, if someone comes to this video looking to make an informed purchasing decision, they have my opinion, but they can read yours as well. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name's Globku, and I'll see you next time. Bye!